Hello and welcome to episode 16 of In at the Side. I'm Dom Hardman. I'm joined by Scenario Neil and JK, and today we have the guy who does this.
New Zealand with possession. Bunts again. Hands on to Lomu, and it could be a try here for Fitzpatrick. And the New Zealand captain goes over for his 9th try.
Do people laugh when you say your name's Dom Hardman?
You want to know his nickname, Sean? You know his nickname is.
Neil, we're recording.
Oh well.
That's nearly as bad as Alex Payne saying "you fuckers" at the start.
I would have been petrified if I was looking through the program and I thought Dom Hardman. Wow, my God, keep away from him.
You'll find out why Neil's called Scenario Neil soon enough.
Right, okay, so let's get back on track. Obviously today we're joined by rugby royalty and All Black legend Sean Fitzpatrick. How are you today, Sean?
I'm very good, thanks, Dom. Good day, Neil, JK.
Good morning. How you doing?
Good morning, yeah. So obviously we're in the middle of a lockdown at the moment. What's keeping you busy during your downtime?
We're in lockdown just outside London. We've got a house just outside London, and we're here with my wife and our oldest daughter, and she's working, and I'm a builder by trade. That's what I did when I was an amateur rugby player, and so I've painted the outside of the house. I've just run out of paint actually. So if you know anyone's got a paint and wallpaper stone for masonry paint, I'd like sort of 10 litres of that if you could organise that, Dom.
We'll get that sorted. Someone who's watching this, surely.
I've got the garden looking as good as it's ever looked. So we're just trying to make the best of a terrible situation, really, and trying to have a bit of a routine. We've been here locked down for 5 weeks now, so we just have a routine. And Grace goes to work during the week, and we have drinkies every night, and we're probably drinking a little bit too much. And then we have a sort of a dinner party on Saturday night where we all get dressed up, all three of us.
Oh.
Very nice.
Have you found that now you've got more time in your hands, there's a lot more of your wife saying, well, these jobs you were going to do, you now can?
Yeah,
a bit of that, but I actually love it. I love the garden and being outside and doing all those sort of manual labour, I suppose. I've lost about 5 kilos. I've never been this light. Well, I was probably about 16 years old when I weighed what I weigh now. So that's good. But as I said, we're just trying to make the best of a terrible situation. Trying to connect with people. I must say that's been one of the things I've really enjoyed is being able to connect with people I didn't really spend much time with early, and just going back through all your old messages and just ringing people out of the blue.
Well, social media has actually turned positive, hasn't it? Sorry, Sean. I was going to say it's turned into a big positive. It used to be a negative that everyone were on their phones and everyone's on WhatsApp, but now everyone's video calling, messaging more than they used to, and that sort of thing. So there are positives to come out of it. Just while you're in lockdown, have you been? I just wanted to ask: have you been tempted to do any sort of skills videos like some of the other All Blacks have been doing, like Carlos Spencer and Bowden Barrett? Have you thought of doing any of those?
I watched that Carlos Spencer. That was unbelievable.
Unreal. Absolutely
brilliant. Absolutely brilliant.
Yeah.
And and believe it or not, I actually played with Carlos. So he was an unbelievable player. I remember I played for Auckland, and we took the Rampley Shield on tour with us, and we went to Horowhenua, and it must have been 1990 or something. And there was a young 16-year-old playing for Horowhenua at number 10, and it was one Carlos Spencer who went on to be, as we know, a great player and a great All Black.
Perfect.
Yeah. So we'll just talk about your career for a bit. Obviously, a phenomenal career. 8 provincial titles, 2 Super Rugby, 9 Bledisloe Cups, 2 Tri Nations, a series winning against the British and Irish Lions, and then just a World Cup to top it off. Have you got, obviously the record for the most consecutive games of international test matches? Obviously, you played a lot of rugby, and obviously a huge amount of success. Is there any games that are memorable? Not necessarily your favourite ones, but ones that sort of you can think back to.
I wrote a good mate of mine, it's called Rick Solizzo, who was our media liaison officer probably right through most of my career, really. And we did a sort of a chat, really. We were just a bit bored, and I sat down. And he said, "Can you remember every Test match you played?" And I went, "Yeah, I actually can." And he went, "No, you can't." And I went through game for game. Literally, something happened in each game that I could remember. But we're funny people, Dom, as All Blacks. We have a saying, the All Blacks: celebrate success, but park it quickly. Remember your losses more than your wins.
Yeah.
And when I look back, and I look back, and the question I was asked when I retired at the press conference when I announced my retirement was, what game do you remember more than any other game? And it was a game in '93 that we lost against the Lions in Wellington, and it was the worst game I played for the All Blacks. And I'd let the jersey down, and I can still remember walking off the field and saying to Gavin Hastings, who was the captain of the Lions, I said, "Gav, you watch this little nation of 3.5-4 million people turn on us because we hadn't delivered a performance worthy." So we sort of stick with that. We're a funny old bunch again. We don't have reunions of our own teams. We have a reunion every year of every All Black because it's not just about one team that creates the All Blacks. It's about every All Black. Once an All Black, always an All Black. So unfortunately this year the reunion's been cancelled, but it's normally after or the night of before one of the Test matches at home. So the All Blacks are playing South Africa. This year the All Blacks were playing Wales and Dunedin. They'd host a reunion for the All Blacks. So where the coaches, physios, or All Blacks or managers, you're all invited. So it's normally sort of 200 to 300 All Blacks come together.
Wow.
with their wives and partners, and with that, it's a really great. So some of my childhood heroes when I was a kid growing up watching the All Blacks are there, and then the new ones come through. Kieran Reid will be there this year. So it's a special thing, and long may that condition. We have a real long tradition, and because we haven't got the money and that say the Northern Hemisphere has, or Japan, but what we have is the legacy of the jersey, and we play on that really, really strongly as past All Blacks.
Yeah, it's like a religion over there, rugby. I was watching a program on it. I've watched countless programs on the All Blacks and that sort of thing, and almost every lad or woman is born with a rugby ball in their hand. Almost, it's kind of rugby first, everything else second, which is great. I mean, that's why you've been one of the most successful teams of all time, obviously.
I just think, I just don't think it's just rugby. It's Neil. I think it's all sport. We go back to New Zealand every Christmas, and I sit on the beach and watch some of these girls and boys playing touch rugby or playing with frisbees, just anything, footballs. And the skill levels are just phenomenal. And I when you look at that, the skill level is so important. And traditionally, the All Blacks of late have had their skill sets have been greater than a lot of the other teams. And that's where I think the progression of other teams that the Englands of the world that have started to be successful. Whether you're a Cole Sinclair of the world, could you imagine? And no disrespect to Jason Leonard, but could you imagine 20 years ago a prop running like Cole Sinclair and offloading like he does, little deft touches. But that's the way of the game today.
Obviously, from my side of things, obviously Auckland born and bred. 1987, you have the chance of the inaugural World Cup. How was it feeling to be able to run out in that final against France in your hometown at Eden Park? Obviously, that must have been a massive moment in your life.
Yeah, JK, was sort of quite surreal, really, because in 1986, I got an opportunity in the Baby Blacks, which is a team of All Blacks, because 30 current All Blacks had been suspended for 2 matches. So literally, there was, I think, 12 of us made our debut against the French in 1986.
Yeah.
And Brian Lahore, who was one of our great All Blacks and my first All Black coach, gave me an opportunity because he'd seen me at under 16 and under 21 level. I couldn't throw the ball and I was absolutely useless. And I got an opportunity. And with that, I was a reserve, and the hooker got injured. Bruce Samara got injured at training. I got an opportunity, and then in 1987, I got into the All Black squad for the World Cup, and Andy Dalton, who was captain, got injured again, and I ended up playing all 6 matches in that World Cup, culminating in that final. But it was just for us, it was just a huge relief that game was over, because New Zealand expected us to win. Every New Zealander expected us to win. And it was just a relief to get it out of the way. Right, we've won the World Cup, the first ever World Cup, we've won it. And back to work on Monday. I was back on the building side on Monday. Craig Green, our winger, was standing on the corner of his road at 6 a.m. on Monday morning, waiting to get picked up to go roofing. So and that's just,
brings you back down to earth. Brings you back down to earth very quickly, that sort of thing, doesn't it? And, going from 1 week in the World Cup final and next week back on the tools. It's quite a sobering experience, I imagine.
So it was, but that's great. And there's a lot of young guys that came out of that team. John Kerwin, Michael Jones. You go right through that whole team. A number of guys that went on, and 88 and 89. We were so much better than anyone else, just miles ahead of the field.
Yeah. Perfect. Obviously, you played for many, many years. You were part of 2, which were, renowned as 2 of the best front row partnerships ever, with Steve McDowell and Richard Lowe, and then secondly with Craig Dowd and Ola Brown. Which partnership did you prefer? Which one did you prefer playing with?
I had an old mate of mine, actually, that played in the World Cup in 87, was a guy called John Drake, who was a banker. He worked for HSBC, played in France. And we played at university together. And in 1983, I was a prop, a tight head prop. Right. And literally, he said to me, Graham Henry, who was our coach at the university, said, you're not big enough to be a prop. I need to turn you into a hooker. And Drakey, who was the tight head at the club at that time, he said, that's a bloody good idea. And with that, so I was sort of one of the first bigger hookers around. Tommy Lawton for Australia, and me, and we were basically a front row of Steve McDowell, me, and Drakey. We were 3 props basically, right? And we sort of learnt from the French and the Argentinians how to scrummage. And unfortunately, Drakey died. He played in the World Cup final, but died when he was 50. Once again, through not talking. He had a heart issue, didn't talk about it, and with that, had a massive heart attack. And then came Richard Lowe, who's an interesting character, physically unbelievable, technically not as good as Drakey, but physically just phenomenal. And we had a great partnership. He became a great All Black. And then along came young Ola Brown, who was a phenomenal, technically an unbelievable tight head, and then Craig Dowd on the loose edge, and we had some great success together, which makes it easier when you've got 2 good props on either side of you. So I was just lucky. Who was better? They all had different attributes.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you obviously
probably quite a good question. Sorry to interrupt.
That's
okay.
Right.
That's all right.
Would be who would be good in today's game?
Okay. Well, let me start again. A good question for you, Sean. Who would be good in today's game? Don, we can edit it. It's fine.
We're not editing.
I think Steve McDowell at the peak of his game, he wasn't overly big. He was about 101, 102 kilos.
Yeah.
Where by today's standards that's quite small, but he had a really good running game, studied the game really well, and I think Olo could have been perfect in today's game. He probably needed to do a bit more in terms of his running game, but he'd be good too.
Yeah, and a follow-up question. Sorry, guys. A follow-up question will relate to that. If you were to pick your best New Zealand pack of all time, obviously you at 2, obviously. Who else would you pick?
Well, people I played with.
Not necessarily. Just of all time, the best.
All time.
80s to present.
Wow. Childhood heroes coming to force here. I've always said if I had to go to war tomorrow, my number 8 would be Zinzan
Yeah.
without question. This is sheer tenacity and fire. Michael, maybe it should be people I played with.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. Michael Jones at 6.
Mm-hmm.
Or 7. Sorry, Michael Jones at 7.
Yeah.
Okay. And then I'm going to give this person a shout because I sent him a note this morning about something. He said, I hate that. I'm not involved. There's a guy called Alan Wetton. AJ Wetton. That's 6. Gary Wetton and Robin Brooke in the locks.
Mm-hmm.
Second row. I love Drakey, so Drakey at tight heads.
Yeah.
And Stevie McDowell at loose head.
Perfect. Good choice. What a formidable team to come up against.
That'd be great, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Well, not if you're a losing team.
But then you could throw in a Richie McCaw. You know, there's a few. You know.
Yeah.
That's players I didn't play with. But.
And obviously you were very pacey for a hooker. Did you ever look at playing 7? Did you ever go into 7, even socially or anything like that? Is that something you turned your cap to?
Well, sevens wasn't one of my strengths really. I played in we had the Auckland team had a sevens provincial competition, and we had such a good Auckland team that we had an A team and a B team, and I was in the B team. Right. And we were called the car park kids because there was no changing room for us, so we got changed in the car park. But no, that was sort of the heights of my sevens career. I used to play touch every Monday night with my mates who were painters and builders and photographers down the Shore Road, and they still do that every Monday night. So that was
I think that's a great thing, isn't it? Like that's just a global thing, isn't it? Monday night touch is just you know, everywhere that plays rugby has a Monday night touch session. And I think it's just fantastic on top of just the structured trainer, just to have a laugh for an hour or so.
I loved it. We turn up there at 5:30 down the Shore Road on Monday night, and they'd have all their kit on, and I'd bring a pair of shorts and pair of socks, and some international jersey or something, and they'd all put it on, and it was New Zealand versus England or New Zealand versus South Africa. It was just like so serious, They were reenacting the previous Saturday's Test match.
You mentioned Zinzan Brooke, obviously one of my favourite number 8s of all time. Quick question: do you still go rowing with him?
Go rowing? No.
No, there is a reason I'm asking this, and I'll get to that. But my brother met you 10 years ago. You were recording an Air New Zealand commercial. He was in PR. I think it was his job to sort of look after you for the day. And having a chat with you, and you mentioned that you did a lot of rowing with Zinzan Brooke. And I just thought I'd ask him, see if you still did.
Well, I know we used to live on the Thames.
Right.
And with that, sorry, somebody's trying to call me. And we used to, I had a skiff on the Thames, a single scull.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't remember Zinny ever rowing. He's too big.
Oh, maybe it was something my brother got wrong then, or but he didn't.
Don't tell him I said that.
He said that you went rowing with Zinzan Brooke, so it's not fair enough.
Maybe on an erg.
Oh, yeah.
I'd love to see Zinzan Brooke try and get into one of those boats. I think we could probably get a charity thing where Zinzan Brooke going down the Thames in a rowing boat.
Yeah.
I think we'd all turn up to see that, wouldn't we?
Oh, I definitely will.
Let's get it organised, Sean. Let's sort it.
Yeah. So, obviously, late 80s was great for New Zealand rugby. Moving into the early 90s, obviously, picking up some good wins, especially against England at Twickenham. Or I mentioned that in 94.
I mentioned 95 either.
Yeah. Well, 95, I think, 95 World Cup was a bit of an up and down one for you guys. It was more ups than down. Obviously, but the down was at the worst point in time. Obviously, you obliterated every game. Obviously, you had the likes of Ian Jones, Wilson, Mertens, Brooke, and Lumu, which probably one of the greatest wingers of all time, in my opinion. obviously smashed 4 tries against England. And then what happened when it came to South Africa in the final? Where do you see it went all a bit different?
Well, this is sort of part of the healing process over the last sort of 4 weeks. I've done a few podcasts, and obviously everyone wants to know about '95. So it's a bit of my healing process. There's not many days that go by that I don't think about '95. But I suppose if I take you back to sort of, you mentioned '91. We went to the World Cup in '91, and I still think we had the best players, but unfortunately we'd started to take our position for granted. And with that, we got blown away by Australia in the semi-final at Lansdowne Road. And with that, I was 27 years old, won the World Cup, lost the World Cup. And everyone was just a bit tired, really, I think. And we had a great run, as you said, through the late 80s. By 90, we started to wobble a bit. And by 91, the wheels had literally fallen off. And with that, I walked off the field and I said to Alan Wetton, AJ, I said, AJ, I'm out of petrol. I said, I'm going to retire. He said, yeah, so am I. So we had to go to Twickenham to watch that England play Australia. Played the game on the Friday night against Scotland. We just beat Scotland down in Cardiff. It's the worst game you'd ever want to play in. And then we went home, and we went home via Australia, my wife and I. And we stopped in Sydney for a couple of days to let the dust settle, because the New Zealand public were up in arms about us losing. And with that, there was a photo on the back page of the Sydney Morning Herald. It was a photo of Phil Kearns, who was the hooker for Australia. And it was him holding the America's Cup in one hand, and he had the Rugby World Cup in the other hand. And it said, the world's best hooker is now the world's best sailor. And I looked at my wife and I said, darling, I'm the best hooker in the world. She said, no, you're a fat bugger. Literally, I've just taken my position for granted. And, we were saying in the All Blacks, you need to be arrogant to be successful with a degree of humility, but leave it on the field. And unfortunately, we'd taken that arrogance off the field and thought we were better than what we were. We'd taken the eye off the ball. In Australia, we were much better, and it was proven in that semi-final. We went home, and my wife and I both said, we can't finish like this. I can't finish being an All Black with that sort of defeat. And with that, we decided I wanted to be an All Black again. So with that, Laurie Mains, the new All Black coach, rang me. And he was from the deep south in Dunedin, coached Otago, had to a lot of success. And then with that, he became the new All Black coach. And he rang me in about March of '92. And he said, Sean, it's Laurie Mains here. He said, do you want to be an All Black again? And I said, Laurie, I would love to be an All Black again. And he said, well, you're probably not going to be. Oh. He said, firstly, you're too fat. Secondly, you're too slow. Thirdly, you're bloody arrogant. And the thing that hurt me most of all, he said, you've lost the respect of the All Black jersey. He said, if you can show me you've changed, I might give you an opportunity in the All Black trials in 6 weeks' time.
Did that spur you on more, or did that make you?
Oh my God! Luckily, I took it on board, and some of my mates who were great All Blacks didn't take it on board. They were given the opportunity, or some weren't even given the opportunity actually, and they didn't take it. And with me, I stripped everything back to the bare boards, took everything out of my life except getting back into that All Black team. And thankfully for me, I did. I played in those days. We used to have a probables team in the trials, and the probables were more than likely going to be the All Blacks. And then they had the possibles. Probables wore black, possibles wore white. And I was the captain of the possible team.
Right.
Mike Brewer was the captain of the probables. He was Laurie's heir in waiting. He blew his calf muscle during the trial. As he walked past me, he said, Fitzy, I'm gone. I'm out. And I thought, Jesus, if you're out, there's no one else that could be captain except me if I get in the team. And then with that, I became captain. And it was almost a changing of the guard, guys, in terms of the way All Blacks were selected. Because the best players in the trials became All Blacks. And with that, Laurie said, no. He said, I want to pick good people. And one of our sayings now is good people make great All Blacks. So some of the guys he was picking, I was thinking, what are they doing? They're not good enough to be All Blacks. but they were the right people. And he said, we're going to be the fittest and fastest team in the world, because in 4 years' time, we're playing in a World Cup in South Africa, hard, fast grounds. We need to be fast, quick, play a high-tempo game. And that was literally the start of that before the lead up to the World Cup. And with that, we had the hardest trainings I'd ever been involved in pre that World Cup. Went to camp, fit as we've ever been. Reason being, we wanted to play this high-tempo game, quick rucks, then get the ball wide to our nippy wingers, who was Eric Rush and Jeff Wilson. Jonah Lomu, he didn't survive the fitness training. We didn't know he had a kidney disorder. And with that, he couldn't load any fitness. So for Laurie, that was just not good enough. So he went and played sevens, believe it or not. And with that, he was just about to get on the plane to go to Japan or Hong Kong to play sevens with New Zealand sevens team. And Eric Rush pulled a hamstring at our final run. He was pulled off the plane, literally, brought into the All Blacks. We played this high, expansive, pacey game with lots of space. There were defensive systems in those days. Didn't know what had struck them when all of a sudden our fast, nippy winger turned into a fast 19 and a half, 6 foot, 5.5
size, 36 size.
And could run 100 metres in 10 and a half seconds in bare feet. And just set that World Cup on fire. Yeah. And I always say to this day, and he's such a loss to New Zealand rugby, to the world rugby. He is the only global superstar we'll ever have in rugby. And he did that in the space of about 7 games over 2 or 3 years. But what we did in those pool games, we played all the home nations, and we just played that style of game. We weren't big. We had Ian Jones, who ringing wet, he was about 100 kilos. Yeah, most of us, we didn't have any big guys, but we were fast, and we were hugely accurate at what we did. And Jonah just was at the right place, right time. Josh Crumfield was at the right place, right time. I was at the right place, right time. And we had a brilliant game against England. And that sort of stemmed back, guys, to 93 when we lost at Twickenham. And I can remember driving out of the West car park after we'd lost 15-9, I think it was. And they were doing, what they do so well when they win, giving us a bloody hard time. And with that, I said to Olo Brown, I said, Brownie, have a look at that. I said, make sure this never, ever happens again. And with that, our whole catch fry going till the next time we played England was at the World Cup at Newlands. And all we spoke about was remember 93, remember 93. And I can remember Laurie saying to me on the Friday, we had a sort of a walk around Newlands team run. And Laurie came up to me and went, Fitzy, he said, these guys aren't right. I said, Laurie, this is the best prepared All Black team I've ever been involved in. I said, we will win tomorrow. And we did. Did we play our final a week early? I don't think so, guys.
Yeah.
We arrived at that World Cup and I wanted to play South Africa in the final because they're, for us, and no disrespect to all the other nations, but they're our traditional foe. We have huge respect for them, and to play them in a World Cup final at Ellis Park was a dream come true. And unfortunately, it didn't turn out that way. I would have done things differently. I probably wouldn't have stayed in Joburg. I would have moved out of Joburg. The food poisoning was something that maybe we could have had control over, rather than having the guys now, they have their own chefs. But that was just something, unfortunately, that happened, and 16 of the 21 guys couldn't get out of bed on Friday morning after lunch on Thursday. But by Saturday, I think nearly everyone was okay, except Jeff Wilson was still a bit crook. But just that power of that game, and obviously the stuff we do at Laureus now, having Mandela as our founding patron. And I look back now, and I look to Yokohama, what happened, in September, November last year. Just the power in terms of what Mandela did that day by walking into that stadium wearing Francois' jersey, and the power that filled the stadium with was just electrifying. That first kickoff, I've never experienced an intensity like that first kickoff, and that just had Mandela written all over it. And then to drive home that night after losing, and to see a black man, a white man, and a coloured man dancing down the street as one, celebrating the success of a nation.
Yeah.
This is so powerful, and that's through what Mandela said. He said, sport has the power to change the world, and there was no better example of that. And then what Khaleesi did in Tokyo, just uniting a nation. Sport unites us.
It's almost like echoing through the years, isn't it? Almost, I know he didn't have the same sort of deal as Nelson Mandela, but it did ring true of that, in the sense of he was uniting a nation again, and the fact of where he would come from and what he'd done is brilliant. I
was talking to Francois about it, actually, and he was in Tokyo with us, and he said, Fitzy, he said, this is bigger than us winning in '95.
Oh, wow.
He said, you wait to see these guys when they go home, and the pictures that came out of South Africa when they did that tour with the trophy into the townships, and to see Khaleesi there is such an inspiration for every kid in South Africa. Now believes that he could be the next Siya Khaleesi.
Yeah.
Which is hugely powerful.
And there's the silver lining. Obviously, I know New Zealand lost that game, but the silver lining is what happened afterwards was a lot bigger than rugby. It was more important than rugby. And I think even yourselves as All Blacks who would have lost that World Cup final can obviously go back and say, you know what, they had a lot riding on this, not just as a rugby team, but as a nation. And they thoroughly deserved it. And yeah, you lost. You regrouped because you went and spanked them in the 3 series the year afterwards, and obviously the Tri-Nations. But that one game is the reason for the way rugby is now in the Southern Hemisphere, I think.
Yeah, I think so. And that's, philosophical way of looking at it, I suppose. Once again, it's that healing proof. I still, believe it or not, JK, I still have not watched the World Cup final of '95.
Really?
I have not watched that bloody movie, whatever that's called, so the Invictus game. They get Francois gets Matt Damon, and I get some guy I've never heard of.
Brilliant. Going back to your time as captain of the All Blacks, Sean, which player was hardest to control? Which player did you always have issues with trying to toe the line on the pitch, or was there not one? Was it plain sailing?
Yeah, sort of. I don't. You'd always be, conscious in terms of giving away penalties and that sort of thing. So, Richard Lowe was always high maintenance in terms of, making sure he didn't give away too many penalties. But no, people say, you were a great captain. Martin Johnson was a great captain. Francois was a great captain. But to be honest, it's the people around you, and that's, and that's why people are so important. You talk about today. The one thing about the virus, Corona, at the moment, the one thing that's going to save us is people.
Yeah.
And that's in a sports team or a business, you need people that are happy making decisions, happy taking responsibility, but overall everything else are the right sort of people. And I know you guys, you're all younger than me, but as you get older, you have less friends because you want to surround yourself with good people.
Yeah.
And good people are just so important. And we're seeing that the stories that are coming out day after day with what's going on around the world at the moment is just phenomenal.
I mean, you look at the guy, Sir Tom, not Sir Tom, well, it may be Sir Tom, all that money for the NHS, absolute fantastic effort, and you look at him in contrast to some of the celebrities sat in their massive £1 million mansions crying because they're in lockdown, and he's just sort of taking it as it is, making a good thing of it, and fair play to him, and thank you to our NHS as well, obviously.
Sorry, go on, Neil.
No, it's all right. I was going to say,
now you got a list.
Yeah. Looking forward to the 2023 World Cup. Is there anyone that you think we should be looking out for? Any prospect that you think is going to shine at this World Cup? Maybe through the New Zealand team or in any other team? Is there anyone you think we should look out for and is really going to flourish at this next World Cup?
I don't know. Golly, I thought the Six Nations this year was really good. I liked France, and a number of young kids came from that. Even Scotland, I thought young Adam Hastings was a bright light, and the kids today they seem to be younger. You know, they're starting to do what the All Blacks do. The All Blacks, if they're good enough, they get thrown in there.
Yeah.
Which I think is a good thing. And that's what happened to us. And you get found out if you're good enough. If you're not good enough, you go away and get better. So I think 2023 is. I thought 2019 was the best World Cup I'd ever been to.
Yeah.
On and off the field, and just through the calibre of rugby, the coaches. I thought the coaches had a real influence on the style of rugby that was played, the game plan. You know, you look at New Zealand, Ireland. I thought Hansen outdid Smith in terms of the game plan. Totally took them out of the game. You know, 6 days later, Eddie Jones does a job on Hansen in terms of the game plan, and then 6 days later, Erasmus does a job on Eddie, which for me as a rugby fan, I just thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, great.
I sat with my South African mate the week before at the semi-final.
Welsh game, yeah.
No, it might have been the quarter-final actually, when Faf de Klerk was just kicking the ball against Japan. That was, and with that, all they said, "Ever get that Faf de Klerk out of here? He's useless kicking the ball." But then all of a sudden, that final, I sat there in the semi-final against the All Blacks, England against the All Blacks. I'm going, where did that come from? I've never ever seen England play like this. Where did that come from? And then I'm looking at Faf de Klerk against England 6 days later, going, where did that come from? They can't play like this. But yeah, so that's really interesting. I'm sure 2023 will be the same because teams are getting fitter faster. Mentally, they're better. I think they've been trained. Their skills are better. You know, you look at some of those the Currys of the world and the English loose forwards. Their skill sets, the second rows, the props we've spoken about. And then your 9, 10, 12 are so important.
What about the likes of play? I mean, I'm a Gloucester fan. You're going to realise I'm very biased in a moment. What about the likes of Danny Cipriani getting overlooked? I mean, he won Player of the Year last year in the English Premiership, and he didn't even get on the bench for any of the seasons. Ever gets looking for England. Now, I know he had a lot of extracurricular problems in the past with, getting in trouble and that sort of thing. Do you think that's being held against him? Do you think he'll ever get the chance to put on an England shirt, or do you think that's gone now for him?
I think it's probably gone now. And what you got to realise, Neil, is unless you're on the inside of these environments, what the team dynamic is, what their protocols are, and that's just the way it is. And unfortunately, Danny, who I love watching play, I'm involved with Harlequins, and he's undone Harlequins a number of times. But unfortunately, at the next level, Eddie just doesn't see him the right man for the job.
Yeah, it's not just.
And unfortunately, you got George Ford and you got Farrell there also.
And for me, it's not just the 10 and his dynamic and how he works. It's obviously the cohesion between scrum half 10 and 12. It's them three. If the man in the middle isn't working in tandem with those two, it just doesn't work. Obviously, you see Ford, Farrell, and Youngs; those three together absolutely tear teams apart. And for me, it's not just Cipriani. He's a fantastic, phenomenal player. You put him on second half, 60 minutes onwards, and he'll end up doing something that no one else can do. However, if you're for times like World Cups where you are going to need a 10 who potentially is going to be playing all game, you need that 9, 10, 12 kind of combination to work. And it's got to be the cohesion between the three.
And I think, the difference from club rugby, premiership rugby to test rugby, it's a pretty big step up.
Yeah. Especially at Gloucester.
Whoa, that's hard. Coming from a Bath fan.
Yeah, no, I just have to get that in there. So, Sean, just coming back to, obviously, you don't want to circle back too much, but you mentioned, obviously, getting ridiculed by the New Zealand public. Where did that put the boys mentally, obviously? Because, mental health is sort of coming into its fruit now, being okay to open up about it. Was that very much the same back in the day, or was it just not spoken about? Or?
I think, no, it was, New Zealand has matured quite a bit since then. I don't know if you saw the New Zealand Herald on the Sunday after we lost to England.
No.
In the World Cup in '29. The front page of our national newspaper was black, just black. And then in the middle there's a little white square, and had England, whatever the score was, England 12-9, All Blacks 9. If you want to read anything more about this game, go to the sports section.
Brilliant.
So I think, in our day we didn't talk about it. One of our great wingers, a guy called John Kerwin, who's done a lot with mental health. He had an anxiety issue and tried to speak about it. I told him to harden up, and with that he wrote a book called Harden Up, and All Blacks don't. He's written two. All Blacks Don't Cry.
Did you get royalties from the Harden Up one? It's your idea. You should get half the fee, surely.
But in those days, we didn't know what mental health was. We didn't even speak about it. Where now, this is the stuff that John Kerwin has done in New Zealand. He got a knighthood for it in terms of the work he's done with mental health. He's been phenomenal and getting people talking about it. Young men the suicide rate is just out of control, and we need to encourage people. And the All Blacks, they're the first ones to stick their hands up and be available and to talk about it too. And New Zealand public, I think it's, as I said, we've matured now, and we don't like losing. We still expect the All Blacks to win every game, but it's not the end of the world.
With respect to that and mental health, a quick question: do you think that players have a tougher time nowadays, with all the social media and everything like that, as opposed to when you were playing? I mean, nowadays there's no escape from, if you had a bad game, you've got people like Dom, DMing you, going, "Oh, that was awful, you did this, you did that." I mean, do you think they've got to deal with a lot more nowadays? Is that harder for them?
Yeah, I think so. But you can surround yourself with good people, and you can create almost a bubble you can work in. Yeah. If you're going to put your name out there, you've got to understand that it's going to come back at you sometimes. And I was always one who, I listened to my brother. He was a really good critic. My father was a really good critic and critiquing my game. So they were the ones that mattered. The Laurie Mains, the John Harts, the Alex Wileys, the Brian Lahores. Those people were, some coaches pressed your buttons. Some coaches didn't press your buttons. And, it was probably a harder environment nowadays in terms of, you were just thrown out of teams. When I couldn't throw the ball in, I can remember Andy Hayden, he gave me 3 opportunities, 3 bad throws, and he sent me away. He said, "Go over there. See that other hooker over there? He's playing on Saturday." And I was like, "Really?" He said, "Yeah, you're not good enough. Get out of here." So literally, I had to go away and learn how to throw the ball in. And for a year, I practiced with who I thought was the best line-out thrower in New Zealand. I practiced with him every Monday night. And then in November that year, Andy Hayden turned up. He said, "Shawnee," he said, "I hear you've been doing a bit of bloody practice. I'm happy to help you now." Which was tough love, but it turned into a much better thrower, which ultimately got me back into the All Blacks.
Yeah. I'll tell you what. I think my biggest critic, and the one that's the best coach for me, is actually my wife. I can tell you the amount of times she's been sat on the sideline. She's obviously a rugby widow in every sense of the word, freezing cold, and she'll just sit there going, "Jay, why the hell are you doing that? Run effing straight, otherwise."
Well, everyone does that watching you play. Everyone says that watching you play, mate. It's not
in terms of like
your games.
Even with kids today, I always say to them, and it's not tough love, but I say to them, be the best you can be. And that's, as All Blacks or professional rugby players, just be the best you can be. And the kids today sometimes take the easy route out. Maybe it gets a bit tough. To be, and that's always, and once again, to be the best you can be, and that if you want to be the best rugby player, the best businessman, best netball player, singer, whatever, preparation is such a key ingredient. The best prepared people in the world win. But unfortunately, with that degree of preparation comes sacrifice. And a lot of people aren't prepared to make that sacrifice, which, you know, unless you have that, you know, somebody else is going to take your job.
Yeah. Going back to your time when you first started playing for the All Blacks, I'm sure there was an initiation. What did you have to do to earn your rite of passage to get into the team?
You know, you in our day, you sort of, you know, you're just in awe. You know, every man and boy dreams of being an All Black, and then to actually to be there. And I can still remember walking into Brian Lahore's bedroom on the day my first test, and it was in Christchurch. You know, and there was 21 All Black jerseys lying on the bed, and I was like, wow, but you couldn't get a jersey unless you're an All Black in those days. There was no replica jerseys.
Oh, okay.
So with that, BJ he came in and he said, Sean, here's your first All Black jersey.
Right.
Wow. I was like, oh my God. He said, first time you pull on this jersey, make a mental note of that feeling. And every other time you pull it on, recall that feeling, the excitement you get. And it's so true. And then you know, walking out the door, and he turned around, oh, Fitzy. He said, there's one other thing. You are expected to win. Like, okay,
have you still got that?
I've still got that jersey. It's the first jersey. Yeah, that's the special one. And then I can remember driving to the game, and with that, you know, the youngest sits at the front of the bus and the older guys down to the back, and with that, in the back seat of the bus was one of the old All Blacks that I'd sort of revered as a young kid. And as we approached the ground, they were, you know, mum and dad, faces painted, scarves on, beanies on, going to watch the All Blacks play France. And with that, from the back of the bus, he bellowed, "Have a look out the window!" Had a look out the window, and he said, looking at all these men and boys, he said, "Every man and boy would change places with you tomorrow. So don't let them down." In other words, you know, we are so lucky to be sitting on this bus, to be given the opportunity to wear the All Black jersey. So make the most of it.
Perfect.
So in terms of initiations, no, you know, I roomed with a guy called Mark Shaw, who was like this grizzly old flanker. He was 36 years old. I was 22, 23, you know, and I can still remember, you know, going to training the first day, came back to our bedroom, and, you know, he'd asked me to put some beers in the bath before we went to training, put some ice on top of them. You know, we came back, and all these young kids that had failed the IQ test down the back of the bus, you know, we were brought back to our bedroom along with 3 or 4 of the old ones. And I don't think we even had a beer, but we were just told in no uncertain terms what was expected of us as new All Blacks. You know, don't be good, be great. In other words, don't be satisfied just to be here, be a great All Black. Once an All Black, always an All Black. You know, prepare as if you're number 2. Never think you're good enough. And all these little sayings, you know, humility, and, you know, and you look at, people say to me, you know, that All Black way is unbelievable. The way they prepare, the way they hold themselves, you know, sweeping the sheds, you know, leaving a place how you found it, because why should somebody else clean up the mess? And I say to people, that's just a given. It's not an All Black way. That's just what good people do. Honesty, respect, humility, you know, please, thank you, cleaning up after you. That's a given.
All things of rugby, really. What you should do, honesty, respect. You know, that's ties in with rugby, doesn't it? You know, it's
that's all. You know, you talk about mental health. It's all those things about, you know, mental health is about respect and openness, humility, which unfortunately the flip side are all the negatives that close people up. You know, aggressive attitude, not being open, you know, challenging people the wrong way.
I think one of the hardest things with mental health is that if you break a leg, you break an arm, you've got a cast on. People can see you've broken your leg or you've broken your arm, and everyone asks about it, right?
Yeah.
You've got an issue in your head, you never tell anyone. There's no active signs that you've got issues in your head, and you wouldn't naturally want to go and speak to someone about it if you're feeling that. I mean, I've suffered in the past. A lot of our players that play for Dodger Sevens have. I know that obviously you're associated with Laureus. It's obviously, you know, doing great things for mental health as well, as we are with Marshalling Men's Minds. But it's about, not being able to recognise that. But I love the fact that a lot of teams, a lot of nations, and everyone around the world is starting to wake up to it a bit more now and start to ask the harder questions, you know.
But I think so. Also, Neil, is that we're a lot more giving in terms of, you know, when people are aggressive towards you or they're offhand towards you, quite often, you know, my wife and I will go, hey, yep, that's fine. We don't know what is going on in their life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think people are much better at that now.
Yeah.
Rather
Definitely.
than, you know, God, just rather than getting into them straight away, you say, okay, yep, sure. You know, because you don't know what's going on in people's heads. As you say, you can't see it. So give people the benefit of the doubt, and I think that was once again with this virus thing, a lot more of that will happen now, of people giving people the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah, just touching on that. Do you want to just talk about what you do with Laureus and just, you know, explain to everyone who may know,
sure,
you know, what the sort of activity you do?
Okay, so we were set up 20 years ago. We just had our 20th awards, and that's initially we were set up to celebrate excellence in sport, is what we still do. And our founder, Johan Rupert from South Africa, handpicked 35 founder members, former greats of their sports, legends in our own minds. And with that, he wanted past sports people to pick today's sports greats. So sportsman, sportswoman, sports team, comeback of the year, sport with a disability, breakthrough of the year, and an action sport. So 7 categories. And the Academy voted on who they thought was the best in a calendar year. We met in Monaco. I was like a kid in a candy shop, sitting with all these great sports people, just literally the cream of my generation. And with that, Johan said, and your founding patron will be Nelson Mandela. We went, oh yeah, very good, thank you very much. That's really cool, thanks a lot. And with that, the door opened, and in walked Nelson Mandela.
Wow.
And he's the greatest man I've ever met. And with us, he gave us those words we spoke about earlier, that I entrust you to go out and use sport as a mechanism for change. Sport is a language that the youth of today understand, breaking down discrimination, you know, social violence, all that sort of thing. And with that, he says, sport has the power to change the world. So we live by that. There's now 69 of us. We've raised about 120 million euros in 20 years. We have a Sport for Good Foundation that is brilliantly run, and we support projects around the world that use sport as a mechanism for change. But all of our projects that we invest in use sport as a way of change. And we're in about 200 projects globally in 45 different countries around the world.
Wow.
We have foundations in South Africa, Argentina, Italy, Spain, Germany, and obviously here in London. But it's just phenomenal. I've got some great stories. I went to Sierra Leone in 2005 with Tony Hawk, the skateboarder.
Yeah.
Wow.
And flying into Freetown, I'd never experienced anything like it. The Civil War had just finished, where they were using children as child combatants, and a project there was called The Right to Play, and just saying to children, your children, you've got the right to play, and just tore our hearts to bits to seeing these children, the ones that didn't go with the rebels, had one of their hands cut off. So you had brothers and sisters fighting against each other during the Civil War, and with that, we went to one of the projects, and to see the joy that a rugby ball. I had a rugby ball. They'd never seen a rugby ball before. They didn't know who I was, and then Tony Hawk had a skateboard, and the joy that we brought to them just for that amount of time, to see these kids standing between Tony's legs on the skateboard, the smile that was brought to their face, and then to see them, they did a haka.
Wow.
Just amazing. So, you know, sport is so hugely powerful, and we're making a difference. So, you know, it's really, really pleasing.
Yeah, and obviously tying with that, I managed to get a similar experience. So back in February, I was out in Bangkok in Thailand.
Okay, yeah, right. Yep.
Went to a specialist school for autism and Down syndrome. Now, these kids not only had never seen a rugby ball, they weren't in mainstream school. This was a temple-run special needs school. They were wondering what the hell, who we were, just a load of big rugby lads bundling into a room, into their school hall.
Yeah.
As soon as they got a rugby ball in their hands, faces light up. They would not leave us alone, which was great. Obviously, I'm not saying that was a bad thing. Obviously, we want to play, and obviously getting a chance to just throw a ball around in the faces, it was absolutely amazing, and definitely something that I take away. It was a team called Jigsaw's Rugby who are big on autism.
Okay.
So,
there's a with you guys being involved in sevens. I go to the Hong Kong sevens most years.
Well, we were at Bangkok Tens.
Oh, okay. So Robbie McRobbie, do you know Robbie McRobbie? He runs Hong Kong Rugby.
Okay.
Former policeman. He came to us in 2001 with a project called Operation Breakthrough, which is a rugby project in Hong Kong. In those days, the naughty little kids in Hong Kong would go before the judge, and they'd get sent to a children's institution, a prison or whatever. Operation Breakthrough came through, and they said, right, well, why don't we do a thing with Hong Kong Police and Hong Kong Rugby? These naughty kids, give them a choice.
Mm-hmm.
They can either go to the prison, or they can come down to the rugby club twice a week.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't come, they get sent back. So with that, Operation Breakthrough started. So all these kids would turn up. They'd get a jersey, they'd get food, but they'd be taught what it was about being a good kid. And humility, respect, all those things instilled in them. Still going now. It's phenomenal success. I think they've had their first policeman has come out of the project.
Wow.
They've turned into coaches. Just brilliant stuff in terms of changing the way kids are.
Yeah.
You mentioned
amazing.
The haka. I had a question on that. Now, obviously in your era, the haka that I remember so fondly started with kamate, is what I see as the traditional haka. Why did they change it, and which one do you prefer?
Well, the haka, when I grew up, the only people that did the haka were the Maoris and the All Blacks.
Right.
So my father was an All Black in the 50s, and when he ran onto the field, they'd do the haka. It was almost like a bit of a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And then they would do it to the crowd. They'd run across to one grandstand, come back to the other grandstand.
Yeah.
And then it's evolved. 1987, the All Blacks only ever did the haka when they were on tour. They never did it in New Zealand. 1987, Rugby World Cup, All Blacks are touring New Zealand for the first time. So with that, Buck Shelford said, do you think we should do the haka in New Zealand? And with that, we said, yeah, cool, good idea. And with that, he said, okay, if we're going to do the haka, we have to do it properly. So with that, the kamate haka, which we do, we did that a bit better than what we had been doing. And then with that, the All Blacks of Tana Umanga, when he became the All Black captain, and I'm thinking 2004, he became captain. He was the first Samoan to captain the All Blacks. And with that, he said, I want a haka that is about all New Zealanders, not just our Indigenous people.
Yeah.
So with that was the advent of this new haka. And with that, it was about Englishmen, and it was about Fijians, about Tongans, Samoans, Scots, anyone as one. So they now have two hakas, and they decide themselves which one they're going to use. I actually like the new one. I think they've put a huge amount of time and effort into it. That haka there was developed by, I think it was Richie's team, or Tana's team, and a Maori elder. And you'll never see that one used commercially. The only haka that's used commercially is the kamate haka.
Yeah.
But the haka is a challenge. The haka is saying, I want to challenge you, Neil. If you take up the challenge, we're going to take your breath away so you can't fight us. But it's about us. And that's where some people get confused, It's purely about us.
Well, it's a great way
coming together.
Slapping all your muscles is just a way of warming up and getting yourself ready to go, isn't it? As well as mentally. Speaking from my point of view, though, if I was to face both hackers, I'd be more scared of the original one, especially when you've got the likes of Joe Nomu and yourself doing that at you. It's a bit more.
I always say to people when they ask about the haka, because haka is New Zealand. It's not just All Blacks. Haka is New Zealand. Yeah. And I always say to people and to your listeners, go and Google haka. Mm-hmm. And the first thing that will come up is our servicemen returning to New Zealand in coffins. Mm. And their comrades delivering a haka as they're carried off the planes. Mm. And it is so powerful. Yeah. And that sort of, for me, brings the real meaning what haka is.
Yeah, well, the Japanese school kids obviously did it for the All Blacks when they turned up for the last World Cup, and that was brilliant. Hairs up on the back of my neck, just watching that. So it's brilliant. So
I think moving on, just obviously getting to the tail end of everything, we do have some questions questions from your fan base from the Northern Hemisphere, which seems quite large. I'll start off with some that are quite low key, they're quite easy ones to handle. The first
Can I pass?
You wish. These ones are actually. So the first one's from Paul Connolly down in the Midlands. What is your favourite place to watch the sunrise?
Watch the sunrise.
Yeah.
New Zealand's hard to beat. Mm-hmm. So we're very lucky. We go home every Christmas, and we're at a beach place. So, I think New Zealand is the first place in the world to see the sun. My father was from Poverty Bay, from Gisborne, and Gisborne is the first place in the world to see the sun every morning. Mm. So I'm going to say Wainui Beach in Gisborne.
Excellent. So next one comes from Paul Riley up here in Yorkshire. What's your idea on sorting out the scrum, or is it where it needs to be as it stands?
I probably get more frustrated with the scrum than anyone. Just watching reset after reset is just, and that's why. And Nigel Owens of the world, they get it right. Mm-hmm. So if you've got two teams that want a scrummage, I've watched games where I've seen one collapse scrum, and normally it's when you've got a good referee and two good scrummaging teams. So I get really frustrated. I just sometimes think, we need to, that we'll never get there, thankfully, that, we almost need to just using it as a restart. Yeah. Like they do in Leeds.
I've got one question here from a friend of mine, Brian Hopkins. He's actually out in Oman at the moment, but as soon as I mentioned we were chatting to you today, he sent me through a flurry of questions. Now, you mentioned Nigel Owens then. He has mentioned that he would, to sort of change the dynamic of rugby, he may suggest sort of changing the number of subs allowed in rugby. If you could introduce one law change or amend the scoring system to promote more attacking rugby, what would you do?
Promote attacking rugby?
Yeah.
Probably less kicking.
Yeah.
That's not the talks of the 22-22 kick that you can get the ball back, similar to
like rugby league, something like that. I just the issue I have is the interpretation of the law is a major issue with the way referees interpret the law, where it can vary from game to game, one half to the next half. So it needs to be more clear cut. Where everything that went on with the tackling last year at the World Cup, I actually thought that was really good. How they said, right, anything above the nipple line is going to be a red card if it connects with the head. And everyone was up in arms to start with, but then everyone's like, yeah, okay, that's worked. When the days when they said you can't stand on bodies, everyone's, what about rucking? Rucking's good for the game. No, it's not good for the game. Although some places that's controversial, but ultimately we get through there. So a radical change is not going to take long for players to understand it.
Yeah,
players and coaches are very clever. They're very clever at working out ways to get around a law.
Yeah, no, that's very. A follow-up question to that. I mean, I know obviously you mentioned earlier you remember almost every game you played. Well, this is from our main sponsor, Scoring Security. This guy called Jace Johnson. He mentioned he met a guy called David Bryant. Don't know if the name rings a bell. Now, he was a debutant in 1988 Wales squad that toured New Zealand, and it was called the Tour to Hell. Now, Jason knows David, and apparently David met you in Heathrow years later, queuing up for some coffee. And he still has the scratch marks and the stud marks on his back from the rucking in that match, even after putting cream on. Was it as bad for you guys on the receiving? Like, was it as bad a match for you guys as well, or was it just because
they were the Welsh?
Yeah, so it was 19.
Did you say 1998?
88.
Oh, 88. That's right then. I was going to say, Jesus Christ.
Now, do you remember this match? I mean, he seems to remember you stamping on his head quite a few times as well. But I think
we would never do that. Never do that.
Your response was you and a few others, mate.
Yeah, we normally had the ball, so
yeah. I'm going to say it's probably a.
Yeah, and we played them in '87 too. I always remember that game when Buck Shelford hit one of your players.
Yeah.
And then he was knocked out on the sideline, and he got sent off. He got red carded when he woke up.
Wow.
Brilliant. You just.
So I have two more questions. One's from Hayden Quigg from Huddersfield YMCA. Just saying, what was your feeling every time you faced the Wallabies? Obviously, you speak a lot about obviously Australia, obviously quite a close rival as well.
They, definitely. They beat us in '86. Then we had that great run. But we had some great battles over the years. They were phenomenal. They changed the face of the game in '91. Sort of '90 onwards, they changed the way the game was played. And you think of some of those players, just, the John Eales, the Far Jones, the Kearns of the world, Michael Liner, Timmy Horan, Jason Little, Campo, Burke. The names just keep going. And just they had a hugely successful period with the Bob Dwyer, the Jones era. Yeah, that was good. They were good for rugby too, because they played a style of rugby that was different to everyone else at that stage. Yeah,
I think the last one from my list, Andy Buckingham from Sandal Rugby Club says, "Who was the longest in the shower during your time? Who would be the first?"
John Kirwan sort of changed the face of that. He spent a lot of time in the shower. He had gel. I think he was the first one to have gel. He used a hairdryer occasionally, which was just like, you've got to be joking, JK. And I can always remember he was the first one that had orange dungarees. He wore orange dungarees. We were like, my God, what is going on here, JK? And it was cool. Apparently it was cool, but we didn't think so.
Jesus.
I've just
got. Oh, sorry. I'll just jump in with a couple.
You go first. I've got 3 or 4 after you, and that's it.
No, don't worry. We've got to go you, because Neil's going to be doing scenario Neil still.
Yeah, we'll still get you a little segment together, and we'll let go. Josh Graham, a big supporter of the Dodger Sevens. I mean, I wasn't about in the early 90s, but I'm going to read this question out anyway, so I can't really reference it. He said, why did they let John Kirwan loose with a camcorder in the early 90s? I'm not too sure that's for referencing.
I watched those the other night. They're bloody funny, weren't they? What, the good, the bad, and the rugby?
I've never seen them, so...
So there's 2. You should. Don, you should.
I'll have a watch.
The good, the bad, and the rugby, and blood, sweat, and touring.
Right. The first name's better than the second one, if I'm honest. The first one's got a better catch to it.
The first one's better, or the second one's better?
I think the first one's better. Good, the bad, and the rugby. I think that's great.
Because we didn't. Yeah, it was just random. It wasn't. They're called Spielberg or something. I think they were called the guys who had the camera. It was bloody funny.
So, and then just his last one. Obviously, off the back of the World Cup, he asks, how do you see the All Blacks regrouping with obviously a new coach, a few boys moving on, and then obviously the new talent coming? Obviously, you seem to have a conveyor belt of talent.
Sure.
How do you think they're going to bounce back?
Well, obviously, they've hurt a lot, the loss against England. Ian Foster's got a job in his hands, but I'm confident he's a very good coach. And the other thing I'm really positive about is that Steve Hansen has left this All Black team in a phenomenal shape. He, we always talk about the jersey being in a better place than what you found it in. Steve Hansen's definitely done that. He's been such a good coach for the All Blacks over the years, and Foster will carry that on. He's got some good people around him. New guys have come in. Grant Fox is still there as the head of selectors, which is good. I like Foxy being involved. And we've still got a lot of talent. And guys that want to be All Blacks. And as I said, that they will be smarting after what happened at the World Cup. They tried to win 3 World Cups back to back. 2 World Cups have never been done. They did that, and they thought they had the firepower to win 3 in a row, but they didn't obviously expect England to play the way they did, and just couldn't get involved. So, players move on. We never thought we'd get over losing Richard McCaw. We've moved on from that. We never thought how we're going to get on without Kieran Reid. There's other players, and we move on pretty quickly.
Would you ever like to see Eddie Jones manage the All Blacks?
I think I'm quite happy with Eddie managing England.
Yeah,
but he's done a great job, and he has a lot of people talk about different things with him. But the one thing is he wants to win, and he's doing everything he can to create the best rugby team that he can, and he's done a phenomenal job. You guys should be very proud of what he's done with England.
Perfect. I've got a few more questions. One from myself to start with. These are going to get weirder and weirder as they go on. But I think we touched on this briefly a minute ago. What was the best New Zealand coach that you played under?
I think I said earlier that I was just phenomenally lucky, to have, Graham Henry coached me for Auckland. But in terms of the All Black coaches, to have, start with Brian Lahore, Grizz Wiley, John Hart for a while, then Laurie, and then to finish with Harty, who's such a good mate of mine, was a nice way to round off my time in the All Blacks, which probably, 96 and 97 were probably the 2 best years I had in terms of my performance, which probably has something to do with the coach.
Yeah, perfect. I've got a question here from Gethin, part of the Dodger Sevens team. Did you ever?
This will be a good one.
Did you ever want to give Warren Gatland a go? Because apparently he was a sub for pretty much every one of your.
Poor old Gats. I feel so sorry for Gats. He never played a Test match, and he should have. He was such a good player. But that was just the way it was in those days, and he never wanted to give somebody a chance, really.
Yeah.
And that's why I played. I played 63 consecutive games for the All Blacks, Test matches. Yeah. And Gats, I think, sat on the bench for 57 of those. It was just, which was tough, considering what happens today.
Yeah. I bet he didn't invite you.
But it gave him an opportunity. I don't think he'd be as good a coach as he is now without that experience of sitting on the bench.
Yeah, so it's a good insight into the game.
Yeah. I've got another question here. Which loss was harder to take? The loss in the 1995 World Cup or the loss last year in the semi-final against England?
I was only a commentator last year, so 95 definitely.
Yeah. No, I thought that might be the point, but I thought with how you guys lost last year, I mean, was it the fact that England played that well, or was it the fact that New Zealand played badly, or was it a mixture of the two?
We couldn't get our game going, and England were just phenomenal. I said to them on TV at half time, I said, if England wasn't playing the All Blacks, England would be up by about 40 points.
Yeah.
They were that good. No one could have lived with them. The All Blacks did bloody well to turn it around to where it was at half time.
Yeah.
But no, England just played one of those games. Everything went well for them.
Yeah.
Everything we tried, didn't work. And unfortunately, England were a much better team on the day.
Yeah, but we peaked that day and then obviously lost a week later. Then South Africa did exactly what we did to New Zealand, the following week. And complacent going into it, thinking we'd won the World Cup already. That was the problem.
But that's the challenge, Neil, is the backup. How the challenge for England now is to do that for every game. Because what people don't realise, every time the All Blacks play, the opposition play the game of their lives. So if the All Blacks are 2 or 3% off their game, if the opposition are good enough, they're going to lose. So, that's why every player in the All Blacks has got to make sure they're on the game. And and I'm sure they'll go through that tape and they'll say, right, you weren't there, you either get better at that or we're not going to pick you.
Yeah.
But that's the love about what I love about the All Blacks.
Perfect.
Ruthless.
We touched on, obviously you play a lot of games for the Lions, captain Lions as well. Would you like to see a Southern Hemisphere version of the Lions?
There's talk about, I think Gats came out last week or said something that he'd like the Lions to play the All Blacks before they go to South Africa.
Okay.
Which might be quite nice up here in the Northern Hemisphere. We actually had a Anzac team one year. I think we played the Barbarians, where Australia and New Zealand came. We had a joint team. Obviously the calendar. I just don't think we've got time to. It's phenomenal to have a Southern Hemisphere team. Argentina, the islands. You could have, South Africa.
You could have two or three great teams out of that pool.
But most of them would be New Zealand players, wouldn't they? So it would just be New Zealand versus Islands every year or every 4 years.
So right, we're going to just move on to scenario Neil time. So I do apologise in advance.
Oh, I got another question, mate.
Oh, Jesus.
Why do you keep doing that to me? Right, one last thing. Sorry, mate. Right, so now this is a question posed by a very good friend of mine, Borky. I'm going to quote him. So this is what he said. He said, obviously Sean's all right at rugby. Is there another sport that you enjoy? If you had your time again, would you choose to play another sport?
I like golf. So I play a bit of golf. I don't know. I'm pretty relaxed.
Yeah.
What else do I play? I used to play a lot of squash. No, I think I'm pretty happy with rugby. I think I did okay. So.
Onto this scenario question. So the reason I'm known as Scenario Neil, I come up with these weird scenarios. We've been using one regularly in the COVID lockdown, obviously for obvious reasons. Now, you're locked in a house for 2 weeks, right? You've got to be locked in there with a player that you've played with at some point in your life. Okay?
Yeah.
Which player would you least like to get locked down with? Who would make it an absolute living hell, living in that flat, not being able to go out at all for 2 weeks?
I'll say Zinni again.
And why is that?
Because he's just so competitive. Would be, everything would be a competition.
Yeah.
Boiling the kettle, I'd be exhausted.
Fair enough. Well, yeah, that's all I've got. I've got no other weird questions today. I'm trying to keep it a bit more professional, guys. But yeah,
very good of you.
That's the first.
Like I say, Sean, thank you very much for coming on the podcast. Really appreciate your time.
Thank you, guys.
And hope we can catch up soon when there's actually some rugby going on.
Yeah, thanks, guys. That'd be very good, and I'll keep an eye on you.
Absolute honour speaking to you. As soon as I told a lot of my mates I was speaking to you, they were trying every way possible to try and get on this podcast.
Excellent.
Yeah, but it's honestly
well done, guys.
A pleasure. Such a gent. Thank you very much for your time.
Keep doing what you're doing. Okay,
guys. Speak soon. Cheers.
Ciao.
Cheers. Bye.